Hello, and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, very special guest, returning guest, hasn't been here in a while. He's, of course, the mayor down there in Longwood, Florida. He's a former TNA Tag Team Champion, former OVW Heavyweight Champion, former WWE Superstar. He's, of course, Mr. Matt Morgan, the Blueprint. Matt, welcome back to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Hey, it's been quite a few years, right? But it's great to be back, man. I'm proud of all the work you've been doing, Boz. Good job, man.
Thank you, thank you. So, what's going on in your world? You're the mayor. What's up with you?
So, right here's a living, breathing example of it. Constant unpredictability as far as um, residents. If they have it like tonight, we had a guy who, he lives on the other side of our one of our stations, one of our lift stations. So he was complaining about, the sewer water starting to come up through his storm drain. So I come flying over there because I like to be in person instead of just talking over the phone. I want them to. We're such a small city, so I like to be in person when I work with everybody and show them how much I take this seriously, and their issues, no matter how small it may seem, is big to me. And long story short, I'm flying over there to help him with that situation, and then took my family to the gym. And like we were just talking before the show started, my son Jackson is nonverbal autistic, and so sometimes when I do interviews like this, I've got to do it from my truck because I can't predict the unpredictability of his behavior in the background, him yelling, and things like that. So I apologize for the terrible backdrop, but to those that used to follow me when I used to do the Wrestling Inc. podcast, they know this is status quo for me.
Hey, all good, all good. But I love that you're like in person mayor getting stuff done, like small town stuff. I like that.
Yeah, that's why it's a driver for me. It's like you get paid. Good lord, I think we get paid. I just figured this out the other day. I think after taxes, I think it's something ridiculous, like nine. I don't know. It's not even $1,000 a month. You do it because you want to improve and change your community, and me and my four fellow commissioners have definitely done that. Previously, I'm not saying it's all because of us, because that's arrogant as hell, but we made our city stop being a city that used to drive through in transition to get some of the bigger cities to do things with your families in the weekends. We now put in a humongous 6.5 acre, $4.5 million Ryder Park. We're now having concerts at our city. Comedians. I've had wrestling fundraisers I've done there to raise money for our local high school team getting anti-concussion helmets. Tons of cool stuff that you do in person. But again, changing this city around for the better. We're only 16,000 residents. So if you can't get off your ass and show up in person to help one of your residents, then in my opinion, you ain't doing it right.
How do you go from the wrestling world to the politic world? Like, how'd you get into politics?
Brother, I couldn't have been the polar opposite end of the world with this type of genre because I got to be real. I wasn't somebody that was like, watching the news. I wasn't following politics. I grew up a default Democrat, I would say, because I grew up in Connecticut. That's where my mom and dad were. So, like, I couldn't even tell you why I was in a party, if any, at the time, let alone what each party represented. That's how far off the path I was with politics. I always hated it. I always thought it was very divisive. So I stayed away from it, right? When you grow up as a kid, my mom would always tell me, publicly you don't talk money, religion, or politics. And I see why she gave me that advice because it's so darn divisive. And so I ended up first filing as an NPA, no party affiliation, and decided to run for office because my son Jackson was born in 2014, January 7th to be exact. I was going to be re-debuting with WWE that year, January 2014, in the Royal Rumble. I was supposed to be a surprise entrant. And I had new gear made, new boots made. I was coming back. They're going to let me be the blueprint. It was awesome. I was really stoked. But when my son was born, I was not expecting this feeling to come over me that came over me in the delivery room. And it was that I can't be away from him. I cannot. I begged God for 12 straight years. It took us 12 long years to have him to begin with. Now he's in my hands, and I'm going to go on the road 4 to 5 days a week. No, no. And I've been pretty smart with my money for those 12 years of my career. Um, I was able to purchase my house with cash, you know what I mean, and do things the right way and save a lot of it. So, I thought it was time to start the next part of my chapter of my next story of now being a dad. I wanted to be a present father. And longer story short, I started paying attention around my city, who makes the decisions around here. It started like that, honest to God. And then I realized it was told to me we have a city commission. I learned what their responsibilities were. So we had a couple guys that were in office for 20 plus years with no term limits. And I was like, hold up, So once my neighbor started hearing this riffraff, I started getting like post-it notes on my front door, index cards in my mailbox of like different residents in Longwood saying, dude, you'd be perfect for this. You don't like politics, number one. So that's a good thing in this instance. Yep. Number two, ain't nobody hands in your pocket to tell you what to do. You're going to stand up for what you believe is right. And what I started to learn was not only am I going to stand up for what I think is right, if I'm doing it right, I'm supposed to stand up for what my residents think is right, no matter what party you're in. I am a conservative now. However, that's when you do this job, it is a nonpartisan role. Like you don't not pick up your phone because there's a Democrat calling you. You don't not pick up your phone because
right.
Right. So we have a very nonpartisan role when you really think about it, because we're not talking about the key issues that really divide our country, whether that's abortion or things of the like that are big separators between the two parties, unfortunately. And so because we don't face those issues on the city level, I just get to work and get the work done and be everybody's conduit. That's the deal at the end of the day. Everybody's 7 foot, 300-pound megaphone. They're conduit. Their spokesperson at the end of the day. I don't even believe that seat I sit in up on that dais is mine, brother. I believe it's theirs, and I rent it from them every 4 years until they say, hey, you've done a good job, but we want this person instead. And when that happens, then that happens. But I never had any long-term plans with this. I just, when my son ended up getting diagnosed as well as being nonverbal autistic, that was the cincher for me that, okay, I was very lucky, very blessed to have been American Gladiator, had a little bit of run in WWE, had a professional wrestling career for 12 years. Majority of those 12 years was on national television, whether Spike TV or WWE's TV. Aren't I supposed to use this for good? Aren't I supposed to try to use this as a vehicle to help others? Yeah, I always felt that's what I was supposed to do. And so that's how somebody like me, who had absolutely no clue whatsoever about politics and hated politicians, somehow became a public elected official.
So now that you are in politics, any aspirations to go even higher in the political world?
You say, so the athlete in me, right? I played basketball, baseball, football through high school, college basketball and football player on a Division I basketball scholarship originally. So I'm very competitive in anything I do. If we're playing, ping pong, I want to smoke you. If we're playing pool, I want to beat you, no matter what it is. And for this though, it's very different because, part of you goes, you wanna be able to serve more people. You want to be able to take what you've done here on a smaller level in a smaller city and try to apply it to, is that a senator seat? Is it a House of Representatives seat? I don't know. But what I do now I've been doing this for 7 years. I got elected in 17, my first term, and I got reelected again in 2020. We passed term limits, by the way, when I first got elected. For hallelujah to that, right? And
Right.
you can only serve 3 4-year terms, which I tried to push for 2 4-year terms, and that's it. Out the door, get somebody new with fresh ideas in there behind you. But they settled for 3 4-year terms. So hey, that's still good. We'll take it. But part of what I want to say is, like, the competitive part of you wants to climb, but at the same token, you can't do that if the people don't want you there. Meaning, I felt like I answered the bell because our residents here in Longwood asked me to run. They took a former pro wrestler who had not a political bone in his body and said, hey, we think you can use your vehicle. You can put a spotlight, get us attention on things in this city that we need help with, Matt. And I worry that if I did run for higher office, would I get that? I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but would I get that attaboy, that pat on the back I get when I go to like our local gas stations or Publix or Winn-Dixie supermarkets, and I'm standing in line with my fellow residents and my neighbors, and they're like, holy shit, you just brought 20,000 people to our city, Matt, like with one of your events. Like our 16,000 resident city has never seen 20,000 people at one time, at any given time, in our city's 100 plus years of history. Um, so would I lose that? Because obviously you don't do it for the pay. You do it because you do see the positive impact you're making. And would I lose that if I go up higher levels, right? Do you think, I mean, I'm sure the governor here probably gets it, when he goes into a gas station or something like that, right?
Yep.
Uh, but I don't know if he gets it on the level that I get it, that me and my fellow commissioners get it everywhere we go in this city, or with people that don't like what we're doing and want to complain about something. I just think you lose that one-on-one experience that I get a huge high out of. It's a natural high to me, and I worry I'll lose that if I go up higher. But again, I don't want to predict the future because who the hell knows? I just know I got to carry out what I've got to carry out here through 2024. That's when my term will be up, um, and then make the decision from there. But I plan on coming back to the city of Longwood again for another 4-year term after this. Unless something changes. I don't. That's why I don't like to make predictions like that, because I went from being, about to re-debut in the Royal Rumble to like that being a dad, and now, whipping my nose in the world of politics, and maybe one day being an elected official. That happened very quickly. So tough thing to answer, man.
Now, you mentioned the 2014 Royal Rumble. I don't know if I was familiar with like the backstory of it though. How did you kind of come to like almost return to WB, them give you the blueprint gimmick again? Like how did that all like come to pass? How was that going to happen?
Great question. No, not many people ask me that. Good question, John. Um, so this and what made it even crazier was it was at a time. I don't know if you guys go back in time, if you could, and look back at some of the old, wrestling websites, news sites, and things like that back then. This was at a time where Hunter really didn't want anything to do with TNA wrestlers. Um, so when I asked for my release from TNA, I had just so I did one last match where I was supposed to lose to Sting and do good business and then leave. And that's what I did. And I already had put feelers. I mean, I put feelers out there as soon as I left, about wanting to come back. I was originally told when I was released from WWE way back in, I don't even know when that was, 2006, 2005, something like that, to go out there and get main event experience. I'm not somebody that can just come in and be some mid card guy. I can't be the bottom of the card guy because I'm too damn big and it looks awkward.
Yep.
Jim Ross used to tell me that all the time. And Johnny Ace told me the same thing. Go get main event experience, go to Japan, and come back. We'll bring you back a couple years later. Well, I started talking with Jim Cornette and others at Jeff Jarrett at TNA. I saw them coming up. I saw their roster. I saw a ton of youth there. But I also saw an opening for a big man. They didn't have anybody but really Abyss at the time. Lance Hoyt, but still wasn't wrestling he wasn't working to his size just yet. Lance was still doing moonsaults and things like that. So there was an opening there, I was hoping for. And Jim Cornette did a lot of work to help get me in the door to be his bodyguard on television. Long story short, I got that main event experience. I headlined 7 pay-per-views with TNA while I was there. And so it was time to go back to WWE. And so I put the feelers out there to agent friends of mine that were there. And at first it was give it some time because Hunter really doesn't want to work with anybody that's coming from TNA. This was legit at the time. And I understood why. But I don't know how many months later, not too long after that, it was that we want to bring you back. I think the right spot for it would be at the Royal Rumble, where they like to have surprise entrance. That'd be pretty cool to bring you back that way. Are you cool with that? I was like, hell yeah, I'm cool with that. And they're like, yep, and you're gonna be able to do your blueprint moniker. Basically a lot of what I did on TNA, I'd be able to do there. Is the way it was explained to me. And so, trust me, it was a tough conversation when when I finally, became a dad and then made that decision. I had to make that call and let them know that, I really wanted this opportunity, obviously, but by the same token, You have to understand, guys, I had no clue I would feel like this. I had no clue. I knew I prayed to be a dad for 12 years, but I didn't know that's all I now wanted to become. And that's all I wanted to make sure I was the best at. I didn't know that feeling was going to happen like that. And it did, but it happened like that in my head, too. The switch just went off that, check, please, I'm done. No more on the road anymore. And so they understood. They weren't jerks about it at all. And believe it or not, I also called Dixie Carter. I called TNA. I also thanked them because I know Dixie. I shared with her, how hard it was for me and my wife to both have kids. My wife by herself was told she couldn't get pregnant. Me by myself was told I'll never father a child on my own. Like, with my genetics or whatever the situation was with me. So combined, we had like negative chances of having kids naturally. So we went through 8 bouts of IVF with Dixie, super expensive. It was like 20 grand a pop.
Wow.
And I think it was the cheapest. And it just didn't work. So when she naturally got pregnant, it just so much fell into place that it felt like the right decision to make. And I don't second guess it one day ever since, because that little boy needs me, just like he needs my wife, his mom. And we're a tag team and working with him every single day, because every day, brother, before we go to school, me and my wife Larissa are taking him to either occupational therapy, equine therapy, feeding therapy, sensory integration therapy, or OT or speech therapy. So like 5 days a week, he goes to an outside therapy before we take him to his all autistic charter school for the day. So there's no way I could have just put all that on my wife. Can you imagine that? Yeah.
No way. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going on the road for 5 days later to play, cops and robbers on national television in my spandex. No.
So interesting. Like, obviously, I mean, taking the father takes precedence. But the interesting thing to me is when you're going to be the blueprint. Sometimes in WWE, just talking about wrestling now, of course, but just in WWE, it's funny that Triple H sometimes like, no, you're not Brian Danielson, you're Daniel Bryan. You're not Kevin Steen, you're Kevin Owens. Cody Rhodes, you're allowed to be the American Nightmare with your theme song. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, you're going to be the blueprint almost again. So it's like sometimes they let you. I know technically you were that in OVW, but it's like, wow, sometimes they technically will let you be something you were in the past. Sometimes they won't.
Great point. I also think it goes back to my size, right? Like I remember telling Vince this when Vince pitched the stuttering character to me. Now, remember, just before I want to preface, I was trained from the old school method that, look, if they come up with something for you on creative, they say jump, you say how high. Yes, I can do it. You lie. Even if you can't, you lie and say you can do it.
Yes.
When Vince McMahon pitched the stuttering character to me, after my second time being, sent back down and being called back up to SmackDown, after doing the Team Lesnar angle and all that other stuff as a rookie, now having a little bit more experience under my belt. Well, I do remember telling him, I was like, Mr. McMahon, with all due respect, like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, and I'll do it better than anybody. However, I was just on your television 6 months ago with Team Lesnar, and I did talk. How am I now not talking? Like, what are we going to say? How are we going to explain it? I overanalyze it like I overanalyze everything else. And anybody that knows me from wrestling knows I overanalyze the Jesus out of things. That's just that's a curse and a gift, I guess, at the same time. Anyway, so with that, I think because I already have been on television a couple times with them, I am distinct in how I look. It would be ridiculous with call me Morgan Matthews or or the red print or something crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't ask questions. I was just stoked to be able to be the blueprint because I did pitch that to Vince a long, long time ago of what the blueprint could be, and it essentially was Ivan Drago without it being any Russian related stuff, meaning just the guy that he's the giant 2.0. And I pitch it to him like, man, we've got Kevin Garnett, 7'2", bringing the ball up the floor now in the NBA. Dirk Nowitzki shooting from half court, damn near at 7 foot. Randy Johnson, damn near 7 feet, throwing gas on the pitching mound in Major League Baseball. All the sports big men are evolving. Why aren't pro wrestler big men evolving? Let me be that giant 2.0. And I told him the whole way to set it up. I was like, because he asked me about the blueprint and how I would go about it. And I told him, I'm like, you say that I'm the blueprint of the perfect athlete the perfect giant, the Giant 2.0. And the way I would do it was the vignettes could be simple. Vignettes would be he would be my Dr. Frankenstein. That if Vince McMahon himself could create, I know it's super arrogant, but that is what the blueprint is. He thinks his bleep doesn't stink. And so he's the Mr. Perfect of the Giants, if you will. So that's why I told him, like, you'd be the Dr. Frankenstein. If you could create your own perfect giant, you would take, you'd show glimpse on the highlight reel of the vignette, rather, of just this hulking silhouette breathing really, heavy, right? But that's all. And then you would just show this, boom, the whole thing the screen would explode, and you'd show real quick glimpses of Ernie Ladd, Big John Studd, Andre the Giant, obviously, transitioning into a little bit more modern giants like was it Taker, Kane, Big Show, right? And then again, one more explosion on the screen, and again, you just see the dark shadow of a silhouette just hulking, breathing heavily, right? And you say he's coming, and that's a nice little teaser. And then the next time you get into it, you start to show me doing, you show Mr. McMahon legit acting like he's Dr. Frankenstein at Titan Towers. I grew up in the town right next to it as a little boy. And you show him on the operating table, and eventually it's alive, that whole gimmick. And then another one you could show would be eventually me training. I would have the top trainers, I'd have the top dietitians, just like Ivan Drago did, if you remember in Rocky 4.
Awesome. Yep.
His gym versus Rocky's climbing the mountain and all that crap he had to do, the blue collar stuff, while Ivan Drago's getting like injections. He's friggin' using all this top flight equipment that hasn't even been brought to the United States yet. He has all these advantages. Well, if Vince McMahon could create his own giant, wouldn't that giant have that benefit? Hell yeah, at Titan Towers gym. And so I put all that together, and where I lost him is where I said that this would be the most synthetically created perfect giant. That's where I was told I lost him, because you got to remember, this is at a time where people, wrestlers were not supposed to have anything to do with steroids or anything like that. So synthetically created could mean that. And that's not what it was supposed to mean. It was just supposed to mean that, like, you created this perfect Giant 2.0 as Dr. Frankenstein, so to speak. But by taking the best of all the former, legendary giants of our past and mishmashing them into the future. Because that is what every other sport has done. Before Kevin Garnett could bring the ball up the floor, he had to learn how to shoot a jump hook down low, which, where did he get that from? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's just the story of all sports. Why can't we do the same with pro wrestling? Was my point. But I would have had it. I swear to God, I felt like I would have had it if I didn't stupidly say that word. It was told to me later. That's why he didn't go for it. So that was cool that I was able to show him through TNA of the years of doing the character there. Not to the effect that I just explained to you, obviously, but in my promos, cocky as hell and thinking, I'm not the next big anything. I'm the first. I'm the first walking, talking, living, breathing, running, jumping, athletic, thinking man's giant the sport's ever had. If the Lord could make, the perfect giant, shit, you're looking at him. Hell, I'm the blueprint of the perfect giant. That kind of cockiness, swagger, and arrogance. And that would be my Achilles heel, my own arrogance. That proverbial banana peel would be my arrogance, getting ahead of myself. And somebody like Brian Kendrick, schoolboying me up and embarrassing me and things like that, right? Or whomever, so.
I love that. It's such a great idea. You sold me on it. I love it. The montage with, the Drago montage, him, like Vince being a part of it, saying like, "You're my creation." Like that, it would be awesome.
I mean, and now in retrospect, now I'm older. God, I'm 46 now, right? In retrospect, I'm sitting there going, how many people could wish that Vince McMahon could be in their own vignettes and stuff like that? And that's what I pitched to. You know what I mean? Get in mind, every wrestler probably wishes I could do that, right?
Yeah, probably everybody's like, "Hey, Vince, you should be in my vignette." The most over heel of all time. Yeah, can you be in my vignette? Yeah.
Do me a favor, pretend like you're my uncle. Is that cool? Can we shoot a vignette real quick?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
I like that. I like that you could pitch stuff to him back then because I don't know if you could do that nowadays or not. But like, that's great. You could do that back then.
I don't. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I just know. I know the locker room dynamic is night and day better, though. I do know that. I know that they actually look out for one another up there a lot more. I know. I'm sure there's professional jealousy here and there, but I'm sure it's done in the like. All right, I got to beat that tonight. I've got to go out there and I've got to do better than that. That's a good, healthy competition versus, walking into a locker room and somebody shit your bag or somebody, put friggin' gimmicks in your drink or something like that. Like just insanity type of things that back then the locker room definitely had.
Man, the times have changed big time on that. But I just think it's so weird though. Like back to the stuttering gimmick, like he knows you, right? Like he's seen you before. They know like why. Like what did he ever explain to you? Like, oh, this is why we're doing it. Like, why? What the hell is that a gimmick?
So I don't know if anybody ever believes me when I say this, but this is legit the truth. He pitched it to me when we were in Chicago, and me and Jillian Hall were called back up from OVW to go meet with Mr. McMahon. And I met with him, not with Jillian, but by myself. And Johnny, he's like, he's going to pitch a character to you. You're going to think it's far fetched. You have an opportunity here to take it or hang out down in Louisville. And, in retrospect, maybe I should have. I don't know. I just know I was trained the way I was trained to, again, you tell me to, throw a pink jockstrap on my face or a thong on my face and walk backwards to the ring. If that's what I'm told to do by the company that's paying me, I am supposed to do it. That's how I was, like I said, I was trained. Retrospect, I think differently today, obviously, but anyways, I'm still young and impressionable, right, at the time. And this is a guy that I idolized for so many years for giving me and my brother so much years of entertainment. Keep that in mind too, right? I wasn't intimidated by Vince. I was always just very grateful and thankful. And I think that's different than being nervous or timid around him. I definitely was never timid. Always felt very comfortable talking to him. But anyways, the way he pitched it to me was that I think I haven't said this in years, but I think the way he pitched it to me was, again, he's like, well, have you ever gone into like a nightclub and see this really beautiful woman? I mean, just beautiful. And I'm like, well, I'm sure we all have, I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and you go up to her and you talk to her and you try to like, communicate with her. And then she has this really deep voice. I'm like, no, 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 that's never happened ever. He's like, go along with me. I'm like, okay. He goes, that's an Achilles heel. We need you to have an Achilles heel. You look like $1,000,000, right? Everybody tells me you're super educated. You have all these great things about you, but you don't have an Achilles heel. Matt, if you're going to be a successful professional wrestler, you have to have, especially as a heel, you have to have an Achilles heel. And I was like, okay. And he goes, for years I've been wanting to put this on somebody that I thought that was confident in enough themselves. When they get on a microphone, they're not going to get nervous, that they're going to be able to pull this off, and I think it's you. But I swear to God, as my witness, he told me he wanted to put this on Brock Lesnar at one point. Nobody will ever believe me, and I don't blame you for not believing me, but as God is my witness, he did say that. Somebody, again, is super muscular, super jacked up, has every accreditation there is athletically, all these types of things, right? But then you put that on him, I don't know. I'm just telling you that's how he pitched it to me. And again, he didn't need to tell me all that. He could have just said, Matt, your new character is you're stuttering. I'm like, okay, no problem. I expect to be, and I told him, he goes, go back down to Louisville. I want you to work on this a little bit. I go, Mr. McMahon, with all due respect, if I'm going to do this, I want to be pulled back to TV next week. I'm not going back down there again, not because I don't want to be down there, but because my dream is to be on the road as a WWE superstar. That's my goal. That's my dream. And so I want to be pulled back up as soon as possible, and I will ace it. I will do it to the best of my ability, and I promise I will work on it. I go, but I don't need to go back down there to work on it. So he kept his word. I was up on the next, maybe like 2 SmackDowns later, I debuted. And he liked that. He usually likes that cockiness. I mean, I don't know how it is today, obviously. I don't even think he's anymore talking to the talents, right, to my understanding. I believe. I don't know if that's true or not. But before he got in all the trouble he got in, I'm saying I have to imagine he was available for them to speak to. You just have to go speak to him. I mean, you just have to. It's like you would any other boss. And I know it's easy for you to say, but no, it's not. We're all in the same boat of being employed by the same boss, right? So that's one cool thing I always liked about the company. That's all you had to go talk to. Yeah, they had creative writers that would come up and get in your ear and chirp, 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 and try to tell you to do this, or you'd have agents that would completely contradict themselves with. That was a hard part for me down there, by the way, when I was in WWE. I'd have agents telling me to do this, but do this, and do this, and do this, and they would constantly contradict each other. Um, so that was tough for me to learn how to. What the older veterans would tell me to do back then was take something that they're telling you, Matt, and make it work for you. Okay, well, I don't, very young in my career, I didn't understand how to do that. Where I'd have some agents going, "You're super athletic, you gotta show your athleticism," and then others saying, "You need to work like a giant, work like a big man. You're not here to be Rey Mysterio, you're here to be Matt Morgan, big giant." So right there is a complete contradiction. And the agents are at the same level of agents too, by the way. One wasn't more over than the other; they're equal. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to digest that? But maturity, I think, is a big part of that. Being so young is another part of it. So it was cool as the light bulb went off for me, not when I was with them, but all the stuff I learned from them when I went to TNA.
That's funny because like the political minefield of even like the agents is even like you're like, gotta swerve around them. Crazy world there.
Percent right.
When you look at it though, like at first when I thought when I was doing the stuttering thing, I'm like, oh, it's gotta be like a rib on him because he's smart and he can talk and he's huge. So there's gotta be some sort of rib. But the way Vince explained it doesn't sound like a rib at all.
No, they were in no situation
Yeah.
to be throwing ribs like that. You kidding me? They're trying to find their next Rock and Stone Cold and whomever. Yes, to be fair, they had Cena and Orton that were the going to be the anointed ones, along with Brock and Batista, that were ahead of me. They were young. No, they were older than me rather. So I was in the next class after them, right? So yes, they did have their next generation star main eventers for WrestleMania for the next 10, 15 years with them. But by the same token, they didn't. It's not like 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot dudes growing on trees, that graduated at the top of their class with and could talk like I can. And I'm not saying I'm Jerry Lawler by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to promos, but I can string sentences together and, in my opinion, sell people into a building to see me get my ass kicked.
When you're being told like, "Oh, act like a big man," do you go to like Undertaker or somebody, a guy of your size and obviously a legend, but a guy that's a veteran? Do you go to a guy like Taker and say, "Taker, what should I do here? I mean, you know better than anybody. What should I work? What should I work like?"
Let's talk about bad timing, right? Whenever I was on SmackDown, majority of the time I was there, Taker was not there. Like he was hurt. Um, Maybe he was in between his character. I don't know. I just know he was there a little bit during my stuttering character. The second time I got called up, which was much shorter than the first time I got called up. First time I got called up on the road, I think I was up there for like, I don't know, 8 months, something like that. The second time was like 3 months, 4 months, and then he was on the roster then. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just more about like training stuff, like blow up drills. I remember doing with him, and things like that on our overseas tours. But um, no, I mean, it was more like big show. Sometimes I go, ask questions too. But I'll be honest, I always kind of felt like that I was starting to ask questions for the sake of asking questions to pretend how bad I want this and et cetera, and doing the dog and pony show. And I thought it was very transparent. So, not because I knew everything, and I'm not saying that either, but um, I didn't really have the questions about that part of it as much as I did the character stuff. Like what the hell am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do? Should I go in the comedy direction with this stuttering stuff? Should I, keep it the way Vince sold it to me? I'm the one to try to take it into the comedy direction because that's what felt natural to do. Start getting, just stuck on a word, but then replace it with a completely different word.
Yeah.
But again, I never had direction with it at all. No direction. So it was just weird because Vince was behind the camera in my like first 3 or 4 promos, um, debuting that stuttering character. But nothing from creative. I always felt they're like, this is bullshit. You shouldn't be doing this. Like I always would hear that from them. So who knows?
Do you know why you got released? That when you did get released?
No, no. They never gave me a reason. They just said, hey, it's not working out. Um, we do need you to go out and get more experience. We need you to get main event experience. They're very explicit about that. I'm sorry, specific about that. Um, and I'd rather hear that and then come back in a couple years. But if I'm being honest, I didn't come back to them in a couple years because I was still pretty pissed that I put all that sweat equity like everybody else does. But he also gave me a albatross around my neck with a stuttering character, and I said, "How high? How high you want me to jump with it?" You know, instead of being boo boo face about it and bitching about it backstage, nobody ever heard me bitch about that character. Nobody, because I try to do it to the best of my ability. You reward somebody like that. You don't just shit on them. You know what I mean? You don't put them down and you don't just shit can them. You know what I mean? Now, a big part of my release was to get people to forget about that character and then go to Japan for 2 years and then come on back. And to their credit, Johnny did help me get into New Japan. At the time, Johnny Ace, and I was very fortunate. I got to um, work a semi-main event at the Tokyo Dome show versus Yuji Nagata, and I beat him. It was the same night Brock Lesnar won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship that night, and me and Jindrak were friends, very close friends at the time. So he and I had a good time in Japan, but I was still using. And nobody knew that. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a 17-year recovered opioid addict. I was a fully functioning opioid addict, meaning you couldn't tell anything was wrong with me. It started when when I first got called up to when I was in OVW with an injury. But again, you wouldn't see any signs of it because I'm not like my eyes ain't bloodshot. I'm not throwing up. I'm not late for work. None of that stuff. It's very, very astute and picking everything up as quick as I could as a rookie. But that addiction bit me quickly, and it just got worse and worse and worse. But again, it never affected my wrestling. It never affected anything. Nothing, which made it harder to spot that I had a problem. Until God, was it 4 years, 5 years later, I'm on a tour in Italy and I ran out of my pills for the first time in 5 years. And I've been using like, what was it, anywhere between 80 and 100 milligrams of oxy or hydrocodones
Well,
every 4 hours.
Jesus.
Insane amounts. And so, like, I overdosed 7 times and nobody knew about it. Um, I didn't mean to, obviously. I was taking too much. But long story short, I ended up getting the help that I needed to get. Um, and I was very lucky to come into TNA when I did. Again, thanks to Jim Cornette and Jeff Jarrett, being Jimmy's bodyguard, because that was my first full year of being sober. And so, therefore, there was being Jimmy's bodyguard on television was going to do 2 things, 3 things that the company was not aware of. The third one, I'll tell you that in a second. First 2 things, as far as the company was concerned, it's going to get me away from people remembering that stuttering character because I'm going to be doing a boatload of talking. Because I wasn't just Jimmy's like mute bodyguard. I would take over the show when he wasn't there. I would be the GM when he wasn't there. I'd be the matchmaker when he wasn't there. I'd be an authoritarian figure when he wasn't there. And it was all done that way on purpose. It's really good booking. They kept me like that for almost a full year of wearing a suit and tie. I couldn't rely on my physique anymore to look mean and tough and use my body language and things like that. I had to learn strictly just to use my words to get a reaction from the audience. For a big guy, that was very needed. And it worked for me. And it also draws anticipation for everyone going, well, he's surely going to be wrestling. When the hell is this going to happen? Rip the suit off already, Morgan. Start kicking ass. What's going on? Kind of anticipation. And that worked as well. That was Jeff Jarrett, his booking on making people want to see you somebody's ass eventually. Um, but the third component of this that they weren't aware of, because I was uncomfortable telling anybody about my sobriety just yet, because you would be blackballed back in the day if you told people that you struggled with drug addiction. Um, was that I'm now not going to be taking bumps. I'm not going to be going on house shows. I'm going to showing up to TV and doing like the most least impactful thing for my body possible. I'm not taking any bumps. So I had almost a whole year of that. So that was my first full year of sobriety. I think that played a pivotal role of keeping me sober. Because think about the easy rationalization of a guy. I mean, I worked my ass off to get clean, but people relapse more times than they don't in their road to recovery. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm saying this, I'm proud of it. I never relapsed one time in my 17 years. I'm damn proud of that. But I also felt like I was, the big man upstairs was watching over me as I was getting clean. Because talk about being put in a perfect role where I'm now not taking bumps for the first time in my wrestling career. I'm not having to wrestle for the first time in my wrestling career. I'm just doing mic work and standing with Jimmy and things like that and learning from even more from him. Blessed, beyond blessed. So just very, very thankful for my entire time at TNA.
Seems like you have a good relationship with Cornette. Was that all stemming from OVW? That good relationship?
100%, yeah. I love Jimmy. Love him to this day. Um, people think he has controversial opinions and things like that here and there, but dude, find me somebody who knows his business better, is smarter, is a better talker, um, and he was a better teacher. He's such a good teacher, such a great teacher, you know. And I'm an athlete, so if I screw up and I come to the back and he yells at me, I'm not gonna go whine about it, cry about it. He yelled at me. I'm gonna take every word he says because if he's willing to get that animated and that pissed off at something I did wrong, that's legendary Jim Cornette. And he gives a crap enough about me to correct me so I don't do it again. Go home, talk to my other more veteran wrestling friends that was with me in OVW at the time, somebody like Nova or Rob Conway or Nick Dinsmore or Doug Basher maybe, and pick their brains about what was taught to me that day and not to do it again, not to make a mistake again, and this is how not to, right? But I was his top baby face. I was his top heel. He believed in me more than anybody else believed in me in this business. I'll tell you that right now. And so I'll always stick up for Jimmy. I'll always be grateful to him because he gave me a 12-year career. When you think about it, when I got signed as a developmental talent, he didn't have to put me on his TV. He could have just made me go to practices and things like that. Like I saw some of the other contracted talents do that never really appeared on his TV until like the office then made him do it with certain talents. But he didn't. He put me on the perfect roles when I first started there. He had me to get me over in OVW for the first time. He had me come out and do a freaking tug of war contest because I wasn't ready to wrestle. I didn't learn enough yet. I didn't learn how to do the basics: lock up, headlock takeovers, chain wrestle, the very bare minimum, right? So because of my size, again, he was like, "How can we get this kid over without him showing his ass yet?" It was hilarious. He put me in a tug of war contest for his bowling services, where me versus like three of them, right? I obviously am about to win. I'm pulling all three of them across the ring. The fans in Louisville are going bananas for me, by the way. So it's working. Kenny Bowen goes out there, takes the rope, ties it to the post of the opposing team, and I yanked the whole thing. Talk about getting somebody over like a freaking freak of nature. I know it sounds silly today talking about it. Tug of war, come on, that's stupid, man. That's 1970 Memphis bullshit. Call it whatever you want to call it. I just know it worked. I got over because of it. And people wanted this again. The anticipation was starting to set in. Wow, can you imagine if this guy gets in the ring and he starts body slamming people, power bombing people? What that's going to look like, right? So there was an anticipation eventually to start seeing me want to wrestle. And he brought me along nice and slowly. He had tags for a while at the beginning, house shows for quite a while in OVW until I was ready, or close to ready as I was going to get. So I think he was a great teacher.
Then you fast forward a few years, obviously helps get you into TNA. Like you said, the year long kind of with him, but kind of like a director kind of thing, but you're almost like his assistant, but not really. I mean, it's pretty cool, like what they're giving you authority on the show. So when you actually do begin to wrestle and you start getting into it, obviously two-time tag team champion there. So I mean there was some success, but did you ever think like I should be the world champion here? Because there was, like you said, there was a bunch of main events. There was those two Jeff Hardy pay-per-views in a row. Thought you were going to win it.
You and me both. Oh, buddy. But again, I mean, I feel like Mark today, he's 46 saying that, but call it what you want. I remember being let down by that, obviously. And I would talk to, at the time, I think Vince, I think Russo was our writer at the time, but him or Matt Conway, one of the two, I'd be like, hey, is this ever going to happen? Because if it's not, what are we doing here? Because if we keep telling these 6-month stories of me versus the main event mafia, for instance, which to Vince's credit, that was a good storyline. I
Yeah.
had to go through every member of the main event mafia one by one by one by one to build to their version of WrestleMania, Bound for Glory, of me versus Kurt Angle. Okay, so you have me go through each and every one of these superstars, an understatement, Hall of Famers from the main event mafia, essentially. And I believe Mick Foley was in there at one point too in a tag match. They had me win. Like a lot of guys did a lot of favors to help me. Okay, in this crescendo they were building with me, the storyline of me versus Kurt, wrestling's present versus wrestling's future is what they called it. And they had me lose to Kurt. And all day Kurt was on his bike, constantly, with Vince and Matt Conway going, what do we do? Why would we build him this far just to get him to here to lose? This makes no sense. Come on. Listen, I have no problem doing the honors to Matt. He's earned it. Come on. I always thank Kurt for that. Kurt will lose to everybody if you let him, by the way. Kurt will lose to you. He would lose to anybody that's watching this right now, because that's what kind of non-ego Kurt Angle has. Excuse me. That's what kind of non-ego he has. So anyways, the whole day he kept pushing for it, and there's just like, nope, nope, nope. And to my understanding, I didn't win that night was because this is what was told to me, at least, that they needed Kurt to be wrestling against AJ the next month for the title or something along those lines, and AJ needed to beat a strong Kurt, not Kurt who just lost to me the month before a Bound for Glory. And I don't know. I just felt like they got me every one of those main event pay-per-views I was at was a good chunk of them were, almost all of them were for the title, I'm pretty sure. And you'd get me to that finish line, to get me right there, and then something would happen where they wouldn't follow through. And again, this is when my size hurts me. You can't do that with me. It's either all or nothing. It's just how it works. And that's why I do. Another reason why when I left WWE, they were very clear, like, okay, this was a miss as far as us, getting you to do the stuttering character. We need to get that stank off you. So go to Japan for a couple of years, come on back. You have more main event experience on top of it, which you need, Matt, and we'll try this again. And so with TNA, it was just like, I was always grateful for my opportunity there, but you could see it. You could see that they were never fully committed to getting me to the finish line. Get me right there, but then never all the way through it. I'd be in this angle with Hulk Hogan, who's never going to wrestle. Don't get me wrong, it was a dream come true as a little 6-year-old boy who I'm very grateful. Hulk also helped me on American Gladiators too, by the way, become one there. So I'll always be great, show gratitude to the Hulkster, the freaking Hulkster, right? But he was never going to wrestle. So where's that going to go? I get what the rub's supposed to be there, but if it's not going to end in an actual wrestling match in which I'm going over in, what are we doing here? You have to be double protective. At least back then you did. With your big men. You just have to. Imagine they did that to Undertaker. Imagine they did that to Kane. Where they go all the way there, but then they don't pull the trigger all the way.
That just made no sense at Bound for Glory. It was like, wait a second, what Angle wins? It's like he just went through the whole main event mafia to beat Angle to become the champ. What the hell?
And that was my first 20-minute match. So I was really proud. So even though I lost, I went in the back, had a standing ovation. I never had one of those before. And it did work as far as me getting even more elevated, because I just went 20 minutes bell to bell with Kurt freaking. Didn't blow up, was in the best shape of my life. I'd lost like 20 pounds on purpose to try to get my cardio up, because I knew that match was coming 6 months in advance. So to their credit, I'll give them credit on the long-term storyline booking, because back then We were always being knocked, so was WWE, for not having long-term storylines. That was a very well-played long-term storyline until the final chapter, of course. But again, playing Monday morning quarterback today, who knows?
That made no sense, and there was that feud with Jeff Hardy where you had the back-to-back pay-per-views, so it's like, okay, he lost the first one, but the rematch, he's definitely gonna win the rematch because everything kinda led up to like, the booking-wise, it'd be like, okay, he gets his revenge. You didn't get your revenge. That was weird too. I was like, "What the hell?" It didn't make any sense writing-wise, you know?
He's gonna get his revenge, but he didn't get his revenge.
Exactly. What the hell? What's the explanation?
Again, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you, and that was asked backwards from the beginning. I mean, Jeff did the best job he could as being a heel, or trying to be the villain, the best job he could. But come on, ain't nobody paying hard-earned money to see Jeff Hardy get booed. Okay,
Yep.
David versus Goliath. Ain't nobody cheering Goliath on, fighting from underneath. Are you kidding me? No. So no disrespect to anybody, but from the beginning that was cursed because we should have been flip-flopped. I should have been the heel. Jeff should have been the face. That would have been very different. But again, how bad of a badass is a 7-foot heel if this heel can't win the big one? Gets to the big dance 7 separate times for 7 different pay-per-views or so, and then doesn't win. I wouldn't cheer me anymore. I'd be like, all right, we tried Blueprint. We were next world champ for the first 2 years. You're doing this thing, dude. But yeah, they don't believe in you, so neither do we. You big galoot. Get out of here. That's what I would say if I was a fan.
Yeah, it was almost like, wait a second, now he's even more pissed off. He's 7 foot, he's a monster, and he loses again to Jeff Hardy. It's like, oh, come on.
Where were you to be my agent, man?
I know. Damn it. Come on. Come on, guys. I know sometimes the booking, because I remember years later they did the same thing with Bobby Roode. He ended up losing the angle after winning the tournament. I was like, what the hell? They did the same thing again. Yeah.
Something there. I don't know what it is. Where they always think like, and they're not wrong in certain aspects, right? Like Kurt Angle's, the Booker T's, the Kevin Nash, all these huge names, Scott Steiner. These are Hall of Fame names. I get that, but at the same token, you got AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, like what they considered us as their young guys. That's how they looked at us. They thought like me, AJ, Samoa Joe, Magnus, Eric Young, Jay Lethal, Motor City Machine Guns. Crap, we had the Young Bucks. We had so much talent on that damn roster that they would consider like the young guns coming up. Like, Mother Fletcher, I'm in my 30s. What are we waiting for? Pull the trigger now. What are we doing? Like,
Yep.
because of that, Bobby Roode, James Storm, I can't even say I should have said their names first, by the way, in that category. And the list goes on of how many great talents we had there. I would argue, and I'll say this to anybody, our roster from 2008 to 2010, I will take any day of the week over WWE's. I swear to God on that. Go compare them. You'll see what I'm saying. And the problem is they looked at us. We ended up being part of Fortune together, many of us. AJ Kazarian, Pure Money, me. I think Doug Williams was in it there for a minute. But Ric Flair, my point is, they would look at those older guys like that they can't be beat. Very rarely would they book them to lose. And it's like, I get you need them to get the eyeballs on the show. I get that. But to continue to, what are we doing to create new stars? Oh, they're not ready. This guy's not ready. Or this guy has this look that I just don't like. Or all the excuses I've heard from them over the years, just, excuse my French, is bullshit. At the end of the day, it's BS. They were always very, not just me, all those talents I just say. Changing AJ Styles, why would you need to change AJ Styles? Why? What needed to be changed about AJ? Nothing. Nothing. Just get him in the ring with these more experienced talents, these main eventers from WWE, and the rest will take care of itself. Same with any of us. But for whatever reason, they were always very, shy at pulling that trigger at that last point that the trigger needed to be pulled for every one of us, not just me.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was they always would do that. The WWE guys would beat the TNA guys. You need to have your own guys go over and like strengthen TNA for sure.
Yes. Yep. And you can't at that point say, well, that's a former WWE guy. Not by then. I'm not. At that point, I've been with TNA for 5, 6, 7 years. So no.
So as we start to wind it down here, we head towards the finish. I was just curious because you kind of mentioned, obviously being away from wrestling. Do you still watch it though? I know obviously Wrestling Inc. You don't do that anymore. You were a big part of their podcast system there, but do you still watch current wrestling? Are you into it or no?
Yeah, I try. I mean, I'm on 13 other. Yeah, I'm the mayor here, but I'm also on 13 other boards and committees here. I'm constantly doing fundraisers. I'm constantly having some. I have like 10,000 things to do every night, along with trying to do the best job I can to be a dad to that little boy. So I try to carve out 2 hours, maybe 3 at most, per week, where I'll go into a room with my son Jackson, who's now 9, and he could feed for a body slam on the bed. I swear to God, he can. And he watches it with me, and so for that reason, we'll watch. And I try to cheer on the AEW guys. I like, when they all started up, I was pretty excited about that. A new company coming up means more jobs for guys like me back then. And other guys in WWE, maybe the timing is just not right for them, for whatever reason. But so I'll watch AEW, and obviously I'll watch the entire Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn storyline, and I catch what I can on YouTube. YouTube's a big help, right? So in between meetings and things like that, wrestling will generally always pop up in my YouTube feed the way the algorithm works. So I try to catch the podcast, try to catch the shows that I can catch, the highlights at least from SmackDown. Proud of my boy Eli Drake and the work he's done. Still think they're not using him the right way. That guy's a star, dude. He's a star in every sense of the word. Give him a microphone, let him do his thing, and stay out of his way. I think he's such a money talker. But anyways, I do try to again try to carve out 2 to 3 hours each week in totality, watching it with my son.
LA Knight, I think he carried that feud with Bray Wyatt. He was better, I think, in it.
Not crazy? I do too. Um, I do too, man. His promos, dude. I encourage anybody that's never seen him at TNA, go watch some of his TNA promo work. That guy, I was blown away with it. There's a couple times where I wanted my son to be able to watch me wrestle live and not have to watch it on YouTube of old man dad, whatever, back in like 10 years ago, whatever it was. So I went back to TNA a couple times just to wrestle one-off matches. One time versus Brahm at a pay-per-view. Another time was another. I forgot the other one I went back to do. Some 8-man tag with Magnus and a bunch of Alberto Del Rio, I think, and a couple. I forget. A Tyrant.
GWF, like it was like a GWF versus TNA thing, right?
Yes, that's it. So I went back for that, and it was great because my kid got to watch it live, and it's like, just, again, because he's nonverbal autistic, I won't know, right, what he thought of it, but his eyes, almost popping out of his head, seeing the pyro and Daddy coming down the ramp, and that my wife videoed it all for me, So that's something that I'll always cherish and be grateful for TNA for always being good sports and always, wanting to. If I'm willing to do anything, they always call and ask. But I'm in the best shape I can be because I have no intentions of going back to wrestling. But I do one fundraising wrestling event every single year here where I live locally. Like I said, to raise money, whether it's for anti-concussion helmets for my local high school team, or whether it's for us getting our very first girls softball batting cage at our city, or whether things like that that are important to me and our kids. I'll do a wrestling fundraiser for it, and I'll come out and I'll wrestle. And it helps me because what helps me stay in shape for that when I got to put on my old wrestling trunks and stuff and still be in shape is my wife and I compete one time per year in men, or 1 to 2 times per year on average, in women's and men's physique competitions. And if you've seen my pictures online, it's like I wish I figured out how to do this diet thing early in my wrestling career because I've never been able to have abs on me, and now at 46 I do. So it's crazy how much wiser we get when we do it, right?
Yep.
Man, if I could rewind time and learn how to diet the right way. I thought I was dieting the right way when I was younger, but again, who's to say what some of those painkillers maybe did? I don't know to my insides, and who knows? But I do know I'm very, very blessed to be here still, clean and serene, and trying to do the best job I can in making my son's environment and every kid's environment the best I can here in the city of Longwood, honestly.
Youth is wasted on the young, they say, which is true.
I see it now. I used to think an old man would say that, like, wow, what a up hater. You stop being an old grizzled vet, but boy, you're right. They were right.
Before we let you go, where can everybody find you, social media, otherwise, and even maybe around the city of Longwood?
Boy. Instagram and Twitter, I think, are the same. At BP, Matt Morgan. At BP, like the gas station, but not really. It stands for Blueprint. Matt Morgan. What is my Facebook? Facebook is just Matt Morgan. I also have another Facebook account, Matt Morgan for Longwood as well. What else do I have? I think that's it for social media. I think those are the 3 platforms I have. City of Longwood is at City of Longwood, obviously, on all 3 social media platforms for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We didn't even have that before I got elected. How about that?
Crazy.
We had a Twitter account that had 1 tweet since 2014 when I got elected in 2017. Before I let you go, I got to brag on this. I'm proud as hell of this. So
Yes.
when I ran for office, I told everybody that, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to need your help because my job is to carry out what you all want. That is really the job. I'm supposed to create policies that you all want to see enacted. So to do that, I know you guys don't go to these meetings because there's like 10 people at these meetings that I've seen of the commission before me that I'd go watch. And so like, it's at a tough hour and I'm sitting home with my family to eat dinner. I'm like, those are all very good reasons. Okay. So did my due diligence, did my research, and I made us the first city in the Southeast region of the United States of America to adopt Facebook Live stream to all of our city commission meetings and have it also be ADA compliant. And that changed the game for us in this city because now I'm getting feedback from everybody, lots of people, I should say, in our city that may not be physically at the meeting, but they can watch it live. And what's cool about it is you can go back in time and watch it too. If you missed it, you can go back. You can go back to 2018 when I first enacted it, and go back and watch those meetings even. So that I was super proud of that. So again, we had no social media existence before I started. I'm like, if we're going to do this right, we got to be where people are at. We can't expect them because we had a city manager at the time that would say, look, we post on what time the city commission meetings are at. It's posted in front of City Hall. Okay, if they can't come, then obviously they're not interested. They don't have anything to say. I'm like, no, 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 no. Because if that's the case, I wouldn't be here right now because I didn't even know we had a city commission just 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So that the excuse, that's not going to fly anymore, dude. So we need to, I don't care how we need to do it. I don't care if I got to go knock on their door and serve these commission meetings on a silver platter to them while they're eating. So be it. Because if we're doing this right and we're being good custodians and being physically responsible with their freaking tax dollars, then they need to be part of it. That's literally how it should work. And that's why I like small government.
That's great, though. You're like an innovator out there with that. That's great because I know a lot of towns do that.
They do, but it's tough to do it while also being ADA compliant. That's I think the biggest part of why there not enough people were doing it earlier on. Honestly, we found a way to do it. I called different commissions in California, called one up north that was doing it as well. I asked them like, hey, what did that cost? How much did the cameras cost? How effective has it been? Have you seen a change, an uptick in people now, wanting to actually participate? And like, yeah. And so I made the motion at one of our commission meetings. Can I please bring back some statistics on this? Can I do a little bit of research on it? I'll bring you back all the info I have, and if you guys like it, we can move forward with it. But then I just hit them with what I hit you with, that if we're all doing this job correctly, if you guys, I put him in a corner essentially. I said, look, if you want to be the type of commissioners that think you know more than 16,000 people, or you could be the type of commissioner that says, we're just renting these seats for 4 years. And our job is to be their megaphone, their mouthpiece, again, and their conduit. In order to do that, they need to know what's happening here. So you should want them to see these meetings to give you feedback, you know? And it works well. We have our strongest like other committees like Park. My wife's the chairwoman of our Parks and Recs advisory committee right now, putting on some really cool events going on in our city. We're planning an autism walk here, hopefully in April. She's introduced her. She's Hawaiian. She's from Hawaii. That's where I met her when I was in college there. Um, Very proud of her culture. So she's put together our first ever along with Luau that drew like 5,000 people. Um, cool events like that. I put together our very first ever Juneteenth event. I was very proud of that. I actually had idiots being like super, not rude, but just, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? I'm like, if I need to explain it to you, dude, don't make me explain this to you. You can't possibly be that stupid. And we had the county's very first black mayor. Why is that not like not one of our top like 3 bullet points that you see when you look up the city along with? Why isn't that? So it created a whole different things to really progress this city forward. And so for people out there, I think they can predict what a conservative will do. You haven't met me.
Awesome stuff. Triple M, Mayor Matt Morgan. Thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
I love you, brother. I mean that, and thanks for having me on, man. It was a blast. It was fun. It was like old times, man.